Hello, YouTube. Hey, welcome to Grey Beard Astrology. I'm Jim. Glad you could find some time to watch the channel. Really appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button, the thumbs up if you can. Thank you. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about this awesome teaching tool today, the Thema Mundi. It's just fascinating how so many structural things in the mechanics of astrology can be taught with this simple tool. It goes through the rulerships, it goes through aspects, definitions, and the joys of the planets, and even further down, there's some reasoning. I don't know it off the top of my head. The reasoning behind the triplicity lords is even instilled in this teaching tool of a chart. They call it the birth chart of the beginning of the universe or something like that. It was this esoteric kind of meaning that the ancients put to it. But I believe it's everybody has understood it to be a tool. But it is very interesting how the Thema Mundi starts out with Cancer on the ascendant, and is my my thing about the traditional astrology and modern astrology. They begin they use the Aries as the first house, and as the natural first house, and then they kind of dictate the houses through the order of the signs. That's my big gripe with modern astrology, I suppose, but I certainly don't want to keep beating that dead horse. Anywho's, so, without further ado, I guess we'll just get to the slides and jump into the subject. It's pretty cool stuff. So if you're not familiar with the Thema Mundi here that I have in this one picture, which I thought was pretty awesome. I was able to generate this with the AIs, but this highlights the Cancer ascendant, and it shows the ruling planet of all the signs as they're laid out in the chart here. And once you start dissecting this, it's such fascinating. It's just so fascinating. Or at least I found it so fascinating. So this Thema Mundi chart it's the raw, geometric blueprint of the cosmos. It is a technical schema designed to show the three core doctrines: planetary rulerships, the qualitative nature of the aspects, the major aspects, Ptolemaic aspects they call them, and the planetary joys. Like I said, it also explains some of the triplicity rulerships also. Everything in traditional astrology flows from this single diagram for the most part. So like we said, this is a teaching tool, not a particular horoscope. The Thema Mundi is a mythical horoscope of the world. The Thema Mundi is like a source code. Its job is simple and brutal: provide the logic between domicile rulerships, planetary joys, and geometric aspects, and also the triplicity lords. So Furnicus Maternus called it an example created by the old ancient sages and astrologers. So the ancients, they used it to compare their own charts, to see how many planets you might have in rulership. So we have Cancer rising, the starting point. So modern astrology starts the zodiac with Aries on the ascendant. Aries, a raw conquest, war energy, naive. It's impulsive, The ancients had a different logic by putting Cancer on the ascendant. And the reason why was that life does not begin with aggression. Life begins with moisture and nurturing and protection. I mean, that's what the human infant needs. Cancer rising mirrors the northern hemisphere and the peak time of winter and warmth. And the ancients looked at the summer months as the ideal time to sustain life. So the summer months were the warmest and brightest and most fertile time of the year. The moon and the sun, considered the luminaries or the lights, they sit right at the summer solstice in the first and second house. So the moon in her feminine sign of Cancer, and the sun in his domicile of a masculine sign of Leo. So the other thing is that the ancients lived in the Middle East, and the other reason that Cancer is the rising sign is because it correlated with the flooding of the Nile. It was like their new year. And also, it coincides with the rising of a fixed star. Now, one thing to remember is that, before the ancient astrologers, before they started studying the wandering planets, the wandering stars, because of their technology, the telescopes and math and all that stuff, first of all, they were only the first astrologers were only studying like eclipses, and they were studying fixed stars. Before they began to study the wandering stars, which the word planet comes from the Greek language, and it means wandering star. I romantically like saying, instead of saying planets, I call them wandering stars. The reason they're picking Cancer again is because this coincides with the seasonal rise of the fixed star Sirius in its rising Hellenically when Cancer is on the horizon before the sun in Leo. So in August, our time, the sun gets in the sign of Leo, and when Cancer is the rising sign, when the sun is in Leo, this fixed star of Sirius becomes visible on the eastern horizon at that moment of that time of year. So it was another reason why they picked Cancer for the rising, mythical, theoretical beginning of the universe kind of thing. The world begins in water and light. So it was the Egyptian New Year. Cancer rising coincided with the Hellenical rising of the Sirius fixed star and the annual life-giving flooding of the Nile. There we go. That's the other thing. The Nile, you're in a desert over there, and you need the summer floods to sustain life and grow crops. By starting in Cancer, Aries actually falls on the midheaven, the MC, placing action and visibility at the peak of the chart. So the royals, the king and the queen, Cancer and Leo, the king and the queen, the moon in Cancer and the sun in Leo. The moon rules over the night, the body, the self, and the ascendant. The king, the sun in Leo, rules over the day, vitality, glory, visibility, and responsibility. Unlike every other planet in this system, these two planets only rule over one sign. There's singularity in power. Now, I have heard other astrologers, older people, but not often, is that they're kind of like a mutual... Okay, let me say this correct. I have heard, and I've played with this in my head, of having co-rulership of these signs. So what I mean by that is that every other planet rules two signs. For example, Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. Now, the lights are different in the fact that they only rule one sign, the moon being Cancer, the sun being Leo. But I've heard old astrologers say that it's a co-rulership, interchangeable rulership of these two signs with these two planets. But unlike every other planet, the lights each hold only one sign. It's singularity and power. They sit at the brightest, warmest part of the year. Everything else expands outward from them. They are the root of everything. Yeah, so this next slide, we have the archetype of the day, which is the sun. And this helps when you're thinking about sect. I went through sect in a different video. If you're listening to me this closely and that enthralled, you will find the other video. But so this kind of illustrates sect, where this would be a diurnal chart. So the sun occupying the upper half of the chart, technically the southern hemisphere of the chart. The sun is the luminary of the day. He casts his lights across the upper hemisphere, defines the foundational nature and aspects throughout his strict geometric relationship with some of the other planets. You'll notice that it's currently in this slide, it's placed to the 9th house, and that is the house of the sun's joy. And we'll explain that a little further later on. But we're just kind of separating the chart, the earth, just to get flavors here. So next we have the archetype of the night, which is the moon. She rules over the nighttime, the nocturnal part of the day. The moon is the luminary. She casts and she reflects the light from the sun. She casts her light across the lower hemisphere, the northern hemisphere of the chart. She cements the laws of celestial geometry by mirroring the diurnal sect through her relationship with Venus and Mars. So she is reflecting light from the sun. So the sun shines and gives light, and the moon reflects the light. So from this basis point now, we expand out in what is called Chaldean Order. Chaldeans are just, they were, a certain group of people back in the ancient times that were pretty fascinating. But we just call it the Chaldean Order of assigning the remaining planets not to random locations. This is purely mathematical, logical, rooted in observational motion of the planets in the sky. The rulership follows a strict Chaldean order based entirely on the planetary speed, the distance from the sun of a planet. The sequence expands outward layer by layer from the luminaries, 5 traditional other planets. So it's kind of an algorithm, if you will. The Chaldean order is an algorithm. The sun and the light, and the sun is number 1 and the moon's number 2. And Chaldean order from the lights outward is Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and then Saturn, the slowest and the furthest from us. What was seen as Saturn was considered the end, so to speak, because it was the last thing you could see with the naked eye. So we call them the 7 traditional planets, even though the 2 luminaries are not planets, but we call them that to make it simple. The sun, the moon, and the other 5, making the 7 traditional planets, which just happens to match the 7 deadly sins and the 7 music notes. And there's a whole bunch of other 7 stuff that's just incredible ironies. So this hierarchy is an algorithm that builds the entire system. It's just one layer on top of the other. It's fascinating. This is a great slide to look at now, and this is what's going to divide the chart between the sun team, if you will, and the night team. So we're going to, going forward, we're going to look at this chart now, and we have to, in our minds, kind of fold it in half at this line that I have written here, where we would, if this was a piece of paper, we would fold it in half, and the sun would be on one side and the moon on the other, because of how this is going to unfold the schema of how this all lays out. So just picture this kind of a pie-shaped item cut in half. So now what we're going to do is we're going to layer all the planets into locations now. So now we have the sun and the moon in the first and second house here. We're not worried about interpreting houses during this presentation. We have to start it somewhere. So they're getting that rising ascendant location there, with Cancer. So flanking each of them, though, in Chaldean order, we have the sun first, and now the first planet we get to. Now, the sun is the center of our our world. It's obviously number one. The reason the moon is number two is because it's the closest thing to our Earth. So that's why she gets number two status, among other things. If I didn't say that, saying that Mercury coming first from the sun might create a question in your head. Anywho, so now we have the luminaries, and now we're going to place Mercury, the first planet, in order. We're going to give him on the right side of the sun, and we're going to give him on the left side of the moon. And now what you'll notice is that now we have a Mercury in a feminine sign of Virgo, and we have a Mercury that's in a masculine sign of Gemini to keep the polarity. That was the word, polarity. That we need to keep the polarity going in all the signs, and this is what's fascinating. So this is layer one, Mercury, the messenger. Okay, Mercury has the fastest planet. Mercury is never more than Mercury is never more than one sign away from the sun. It immediately flanks the two lights. Gemini flanks the moon, the nocturnal sign. Virgo flanks the sun, the solar sign. Mercury's role is to act as the eternal bridge between oppositions and hemisphere. Mercury is the only planet that changes its sect orientation depending upon its relationship with the sun in any given nativity or given chart. Mercury was the messenger who was sent on these wild goose chases to go do things in other realms that other people couldn't do. So where we have all this polarity, the sun, the moon, let's say the polarity of Venus and Mars, male and female, if you will, the polarity of the polarity of Saturn and Jupiter, restriction and expansion. There's always a polarity, and Mercury is the one that bridges it. And that's why he is so unique. The luminaries are like their group of people, and Venus and Mars are their group of people. And then, Saturn and Jupiter are doing their thing. But Mercury is the one that connects them all and bridges all the gaps. Like I said, Mercury, the messenger, always moving between oppositions, always moving between the polarities. So the next layer is Venus. Venus and harmony connection. Venus is never more than 2 signs away from the sun, never more than like 60 degrees or 59 degrees. Venus is the next planet in order. So now, if we look to the right of the sun here on the Thema Mundi map here, we have Venus taking rulership in the sign of Libra, a masculine sign. And then on the other side of the chart, on the left side with the moon, Venus takes rulership in the sign of Taurus, the feminine sign of Taurus now, because we're keeping those polarities of every other sign going on. So the resulting aspect here, well, we're not going to talk about aspects, but now we start having aspects, which is a placement of the sextile aspect, introducing harmony and connection and stuff. We'll go into that a little later. I just want to illustrate to you that now we have a location for Venus, and is 2 signs away from the luminaries. So Venus obviously is the next in speed and location from the sun. Taurus precedes the moon. Libra follows the sun. Venus is the unifying planet, the connector. Venus is what allows things to be, where you need force to create things with Mars. With Venus, the creation, the artistry just happens. Creation, but it's not forced. And Venus brings harmony and happiness and luxury and enjoyment, and that's all that, and love and passion and all those good things. That's what it's there to represent. Things in the world, maybe material, maybe physical, the things that bring joy and comfort. Which doesn't mean to say there isn't a downside to those things. So now we get to the 4th layer, which is Mars and the geometry of conflict. So Mars follows Venus in Chaldean order, places Mars kind of a bit of a distance away from the life-giving sign of Cancer and the Sun. And Mars is irritated by this. The resulting aspect that we'll go into later is friction, is tension. Mars is about tension. You know, we're just trying to illustrate that each planet is getting a domicile on each half of the chart. Mars, the warrior, raw warrior energy, conflict, action under pressure. Now, technically, Mars enjoys being in Scorpio more so than Aries, because Mars is a nocturnal planet. So now we're going on to the fourth layer, which is Jupiter, archetypal support. So now Jupiter, in a flanking motion from the Sun and Moon, take up residency next to Mars in Chaldean Order. So Jupiter is the second slowest visible planet, also known as the Great Benefic. I forgot to mention the Lesser Benefic, which is Venus, and the Lesser Malefic, which is Mars. So now we get to the Greater Benefic. So, of course, Jupiter is allotted one masculine sign of Sagittarius and one feminine sign of Pisces in the Chaldean Order. And they fill out these two houses known as their domiciles now, or the houses. I'm sorry, not the houses. The domiciles are the signs that the planets rule over. So Pisces makes a supportive water trine with Cancer, and Sagittarius makes this fiery trine with the Sun. The resulting aspect that, of course, we'll get into later, is a trine, a delivery of expansion, support. The trine was known as perfect love and perfect friendship between the planets. So now we get to layer 5, the last planet in Chaldean Order, which is the big bad guy Saturn, known as the Greater Malefic. Saturn, the boundaries. Level 5, the boundaries of Saturn. So Saturn's the slowest and the furthest from Earth, from our vantage point, that you could see with the naked eye. And he's pretty dim in color also. Saturn rules over Capricorn and Aquarius because this is the maximum darkness in the coldest time of the year. As you can see now, where we've been talking about polarities and stuff is oppositions. So we have the Sun and the Moon over there in Cancer and Leo, and we have Saturn ruling the signs in opposition, and that comes in the winter months, the time of the death of winter, before the new year, before the renewal of the year. So it's part of the whole life cycle of coming to be and passing away, and so if the Sun and the Moon are the great lights, Saturn is the dark sun. That's it's kind of mischievous way to say it, but Saturn is the dark lord, the lord of darkness, directly opposite the lights. This opposition sets the limitations of visibility in the cosmos, and Saturn is the lord of boundaries, the lord of limitations, the lord of delays. This establishes the oppositional aspect, represented by perfect hatred, the most difficult aspect in astrology, and forming this ultimate limit of the visible cosmos. Now we went over how and why. So the assignment of the rulership of the planets in Chaldean Order with this chart, the Thema Mundi, and we've split the chart into half. A lunar side and a solar side, and now we've filled in all the domiciles with their ruling planets, the Lord that rules them, and we've managed to continue to match the polarity of every house, every other. We've matched up that why the planets have two houses that they rule. This is interesting here. So we have the geometry of the hostile malefic angle. So this is what I kind of touched on earlier. So we have Saturn making, the Saturn is opposite the Sun and opposite the Moon. Take your pick on Cancer or Aquarius. So this is what's considered the 180-degree oppositional aspect. The Greater Malefic was described as perfect hatred, engenders pure destruction and separation. Really hot, and by hot I mean partile exact oppositions or something like that. It's very difficult. On the right side, you'll see that Mars is making that 90-degree aspect, or the left hand or right hand turn there with the luminaries. So Mars is half of the Saturn opposition. Half of that is 90 degrees because Saturn is the greater malefic and Mars is the lesser malefic. Why? Well, number one, Saturn's a bigger planet. Saturn's further away. Mars is a smaller planet. And then and Mars is closer, but okay. And now the size of the planet is one thing, so that's why there's greater and lesser. The other thing is the speed. Mars goes around the whole zodiac in 2 years. Saturn takes 28 and a half years. So that's why one of the reasons Saturn is given the greater malefic and Mars the lesser. They are both difficult to deal with, but because of speed, location, size, that's how they get their names. Mars represents, or the aspect of 90-degree square is explained as the essence of Mars, the difficulty and strife, is believed to be half the power of the opposition. So the opposition being the most difficult aspect, and the nature of the aspect of the opposition is of the nature of Saturn. So the very premise, the explanation of the planets are the explanation of the aspect, generically speaking. I say that a lot. Is that one of my fallback phrases? I've noticed I say "and stuff like that" a lot, and then I like the other term of generically, because there's all these specifics, specifics. So we also have the geometry of the benefic angles. You'll see that Jupiter is associated with the 100-degree trine. It's not very well illustrated here, but you can see that the moon makes a trine aspect to Jupiter in the Thema Mundi. The sun makes a trine aspect to Jupiter in Sagittarius. So the 120-degree aspect was referred to as perfect love and perfect friendship. The greater benefic provides flowing, unconditional support, and aspects are of the nature of Jupiter are almost more beneficial than conjunctions. Some would say even better if it's a benefic planet throwing the aspect. And then we have the lesser benefic, which is Venus, and her aspect is the 60-degree sextile aspect. Venus is, this aspect is considered perfect love and friendship, imperfect love and friendship. And I'll bet you we're going to have to go back and talk about Mars here. I had mentioned that the greater malefic, Saturn, is perfect hatred. Now, Mars, being the lesser malefic, is imperfect hatred. The lesser malefic generates tension and warlike conflict. So, picture, Saturn as being like the immovable force, like the corporation you can't defend yourself against. But Mars is like the bully that's kicking you in the shin, It's imperfect hatred, it's tension, and it's warlike. It's in your face. Saturn is like you can't fight a corporation. It's perfect hatred. I don't know if that illustrates it, a little bit different, And that doesn't mean that Saturn can't come sit on your head, So, just saying. So now, just to jump back here in my perfectly sloppy way. So Jupiter, once again, is perfect love and friendship, the greater benefic, and provides flowing, unconditional support. Perfect love, right? So Venus would be imperfect love and friendship, the lesser benefic, harmony, connection, and all those pleasurable things, right? So let me look at my notes here. The Thema Mundi does not show rulership. It mathematically defines the nature of the aspects. The aspects take on the character of the planet whose domicile makes that angle to the luminaries. So the 180 degree opposition is of the nature of Saturn. The 90 degree square is of the nature of Mars, in perfect hatred. The 120 degree aspect is of the nature of Jupiter, and the 60 degree aspect is of the nature of Venus. Now, I want to make a note here that there is a semi-sextile, which semi-sextile would be half of the sextile, which is 30 degrees. And then there is the 150 degree aspect, which is called the quincunx. So now we understand that. So we're going to talk about this 30 degree the semi-sextile, the 30 degrees, and the 150 degree quincunx. Now, both of these aspects generically are called inconjunct. I like to say inconjuncts, and then somebody's always got to correct me and say, no, it's a quincunx. Well, inconjunct means either 30 degrees or 150 degrees. Semi-sextile means 30 degrees. Quincunx means 150 degrees. Inconjunct means either one of them. And that's my definition. I know people will split hairs with me. I don't care. Anywho, so these generate geometric disconnections. These two aspects, and what they are is that it's whatever sign you look at, the sign on either side of it is 30 degrees away. That is the semi-sextile, or an adversion. The word is adversion. So 30 degrees away is an aspect of adversion. 150 degrees away is an aspect of adversion. And it means an aspect of no sight, of no connect. The planets it's just a visual. But the idea is that when you're standing in one sign, you can't see the sign next to you or the sign that is next to the sign that is opposite of you. And that's the 150 degree aspect and the 30 degree aspect. These planets go out of their way to avoid each other. There's no communication. There's no connection. There's not even an opposition of friction. The opposition being the difficult aspect, but at least there is vision. They could see each other. With the 150 degree, I think the 150 degree aspect is the worst one, the worser one. And that is the one of it's like you picture like some person that you would walk across the street to avoid. You want nothing to do with them. And not only walk across the street, walk to the other side of the next block. Nothing, there's no connection, there's no talking, there's no nothing. There's no connection between these planets. It's a very difficult aspect, but it has to be red hot. It has to be like within a 1 degree orb. And an orb is how far off of the exact number that an aspect is. For example, 150 degrees. So if there was a planet 152 degrees away, that would be considered a 2 degree orb because it's 2 degrees off of the number. That's what the orb means. So it just means a give and take, or plus or minus. And this 150 degree aspect would have to be within a 2 degree orb to be considered actual. It's a very tight orb. Other planets, you give a much wider orb. So this is an aspect of disharmony between planets and houses. Poor communication. They go out of their way to avoid each other. It's a very difficult aspect. So I think we've covered the trine, the sextile, the opposition, and the square. And I even delved into a little bit of the two inconjuncts, as I like to call them, the inconjuncts. Okay, so I thought it'd be a good place to pause right here, and I started editing the video and stuff, and I made it about 30 minutes or so. In making the video and stuff, I just was kind of rambling on and on. So I thought I'd cap it off and continue on the next video instead of just go and make this longer and stuff. I'm not sure what the audience likes, if they want me to go on for an hour and a half or not, Well, so this way I get to edit this together and get it out there a little sooner. So we covered, I introduced everybody to the Thema Mundi. We located and kind of understood the structure of the Thema Mundi by locating the planets and the different domiciles. Kind of, touched on the aspect ideas a little bit. We didn't get to talking about the joys of the houses, where the certain planets like to prefer to be in, what houses. And then there's even more illustrations on how the aspect theory goes with that. And then, we could talk about naming the houses, how they get their abbreviated name, or the domiciles, or the places. I'm sorry. Gosh darn it. The places, not the houses, are the places. So we've got to get that right. So in the next video, we'll talk about the joys of the planets and put them in the houses they like to be in. And then we'll talk more about aspects, and I'm sure I'll ramble on about other things too. And then we can talk about the names of the houses, and even some of the base information of why the lots, the Arabic parts and the lots and stuff can all be folded into this Thema Mundi subject. But so now we have the Thema Mundi as a teaching tool, and it's just such a fun thing to refer to. I hope you found it as fascinating as I do, So anyway, if you're still watching this long, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. If you could, hit the sub button and the like button. I'll see you next time. Grey Beard Astrology. I'm Jim. See ya.